Hello everyone and welcome to Star Wars on High. Thank you for stopping by. We are back with more High Republic goodness. As last week, the first 4 chapters of the next adult novel Convergence was released. So let's break down these 4 chapters and see what the story is like so far. If it wasn't obvious from the start, this video will contain spoilers for the first 4 chapters of Convergence and possibly for Path of Deceit. So if you do not want to be spoiled for Phase 2 of the High Republic, click off of this video now because the breakdown begins in 3, 2, 1. Chapter 1 opens up on the planet of E'Ronoh in the capital known as the Rook. Now, we're all familiar with E'Ronoh and its close planet of Eiram from Phase 1 of the High Republic, as we had several stories of how the planets were at war and some of the Jedi, like Orla Jareni, were sent to help with the issue. From the look of things, these planets are still at war, but we open in a vendor street. Everyone is wearing cloaks and ash and dust is falling everywhere. E'Ronoh and Eiram are in the middle of a ceasefire attempt and the people are suffering. The vendors are selling spoiled food, most of the people are dehydrated, and they're all just waiting around for the next water shipment to come in. Walking through the crowd is a hooded figure by the name Serena, but during a speech given by one of the military captains, Serena sneaks up behind an astromech droid and proceeds to plug a program chip into the droid. She is noticed by a guard and is able to talk herself out of it, getting away by asking for some spare change or even some water. The guard dismisses Serena as a regular peasant and she gets away freely. As she walks through the crowd, she pulls out a comlink and announces that it is done, and while the voice on the other end seems worried, Serena ensures her that everything is going to plan, with the chapter ending with the voice on the comlink telling Serena to hurry back because they got a perfect spot to see the fireworks. Chapter 2 takes us beyond E'Ronoh's gravity well as Captain Ziri Albaran and the rest of Thigh Fire Squadron are over the planet's atmosphere waiting for an ice hauler to jump from hyperspace and deliver E'Ronoh's water shipment. They're all starting to get a little nervous as the shipment is running late, and they are taking up the airspace that borders the corridor, which is the boundary between E'Ronoh and Eiram. Ziri doesn't mind waiting entirely though, as she enjoys getting to know her squadron through the open comms. And while she never really replies, she could get to know them just by the rhythm of their voices, especially with the youngest pilot, Thighfire 9, also known as Blitz. Finally, after waiting for what felt like days, the ice hauler makes its jump out of hyperspace and you can really tell how desperate they are for water. Ziri becomes so happy at the sight that she smiles and her dry lips crack and start bleeding. I personally have been dehydrated to the point of hospitalization once in my life, and when I say all you ever want is water, it's so true. So this scene is really uncomfortable because I can understand the need for water. Maybe not to the extent of fighting a war on top of that, but you get the basic idea. Her excitement dies almost instantly, however, as 2 ships also emerge out of hyperspace, closely behind the ice hauler and nearly causing a collision. The 2 ships happen to be Republic Longbeams and seem to have absolutely no clue what they're doing. With ships that long and that close to 2 planets and a moon, the gravitational pulls begin to cause problems. Captain Ziri and the rest of her squadron have to form up to avoid being crushed between incoming ships. The only problem is that it will take them nearly to the breaking point of the corridor, which they really don't need to cross. But the troubles don't end there, as the ice hauler also had to move to avoid collision and is now headed on a direct path towards Eiram. Blitz ends up freaking out over the idea of losing their water supply and breaks formation in an attempt to somehow get the ice hauler back on course. But just as he does, his devil fighter starts to glitch and have issues, flying him in all directions. Ziri's heart starts pounding as this happens when Blitz asks for help because he is not in control of his fighter, but it's too late. The ship's malfunction sends off a green bolt flying right over the corridor into Eiram's space, and before anything could be said, all of Eiram's forces returned fire. Chapter 3 takes us through a whole lot. Taking a page out of Light of the Jedi and telling the perspectives of everyone during a single event, we open aboard the Valiant in hyperspace, one of the Republic Longbeams that will come out of hyperspace near Eiram. Here we meet Jedi Knight Gela Natai, whom I believe to be the Jedi on the cover, as the character does have 2 lightsabers. But Gela is alone in the cargo hold, which is filled nearly to the ceiling with medical supplies for the planet of Eiram. She's practicing the aerial walk, which she had picked up from a priestess of the Singing Mountain when she was in Jedha City. This intense practice took every bit of her concentration to stay in the air when it's broken by Jedi Padawan Enya Keen. As Enya enters the room, Gela falls straight to the floor. Enya is a bit surprised to see that Gela wasn't meditating on the floor like the usual methods suggest, but Gela explains that there are many different ways for Jedi to meditate. Enya does seem to be a bit nosy though, as she brings up some other points of conversation, one of which includes Gela's failures at a mission 2 weeks prior, a failure that is still very fresh to Gela and she just wants to move on from it. She hopes that she can redeem herself by going to Jedha and learning from all of the religions of the Force, because as far as Gela is concerned, she could be a much better Jedi. Enya continues though and says that Jedi Master Creighton Sun believes that Gela has the skills to become a great master, and that she only needs to apply herself. Those words coming from Master Sun mean a lot to her, as Master Sun just happens to walk into the room. He explains that they're about to come out of hyperspace and that everyone should report to the bridge. After getting fastened in the bridge, they prepare to jump out of lightspeed as they discuss how many trips they've taken to Eiram while they've never once gone to E'Ronoh. At the helm of the ship is a Syrian Jedi Master Char Ryle Roy, who explains that they would go to E'Ronoh if they ever asked for assistance, but they have made no contact with anyone at all, while they have gone to Eiram on several occasions. This particular trip, however, should be much smoother as both the planets are in the middle of a ceasefire. The longest ceasefire in this war's history, which stuns Gela when she discovers that it's only been for 3 days. But it will have to hold a little longer until their supplies are dropped off. Unfortunately, it seems that they spoke too soon as they come out of hyperspace to nearly collide with another Republic long beam, the Paxion. Confused as to why another Republic long beam is here, they also notice the fighting happening on both sides and believe that the ceasefire has ended. As the Jedi plan to evacuate the battle zone and head for the moon, Gela notices a strong disturbance in the Force when she notices a Devil fighter flying out of control, and through the Force she can feel the overwhelming fear in the young pilot as he fights to take control of the fighter. Gela insists that they must do something, but from where they are, there isn't much they can do without fully getting involved and picking a side in this war. Gela, however, refuses to sit idle and takes the initiative, leaving the bridge and jumping into an Alpha 3 Jedi starfighter in hopes of helping the young pilot. In her pursuit, Gela gets called to return to the Valiant, but she refuses as she must help this pilot. As she attempts to engage, however, she's tailed by Captain Ziri as she orders the Alpha starfighter to break off her pursuit. While all of this goes on, General Lao calms to Ziri, explaining that he knew she would break the ceasefire, but Ziri is reluctant to let him think that this is a real assault. Gela is able to take control of the situation and explain to everyone how to follow suit. General Lao allows them to travel the path to stop Blitz's fighter from crashing directly into the capital of Eiram. Gela and Ziri box in Blitz's fighter as he attempts to override the autopilot system. But in the midst of all the chaos, the Ice Hauler calms into Captain Ziri, saying that this is not what they signed up for, and drops the cargo in dead space and heads to lightspeed. And now the cargo is also caught in Eiram's gravitational pull, and Captain Ziri has to beg General Lao over the comms to let them retrieve the cargo and that no shots will be fired, and that this is all just some wild incident. Blitz manages to fix his autopilot and gains control of his ship, but something else happens, and it's unfortunately too late as a red and white fire blooms from Blitz's Devil fighter. A page break takes us to Blitz's point of view. Blitz's real name is Bly Tevin, and he got the nickname because he struggled with flying and would crash one simulation after the next. But he just wanted to become a pilot and fight for what his late sister stood for, as a malfunction with her ship caused her to fall out of the sky to her death. And all Bly wanted to do was to continue his sister's legacy. So he took his ceremonial Bane blade from his side and jammed it into the console to override the autopilot, but it was no use. And Bly's last thoughts as he flew over the turquoise sea of Eiram was of his mother, and how she had always wanted to see those same seas. Chapter 4 takes us to the surface of Eiram, in the Rays Canal in the capital city of Erasmus. As it turns out, Eiram is much better off than E'Ronoh is. It's explained that when the stars fall over Eiram, no one really seems to care, mainly because the citizens within the capital know that there are missile launchers that will be used to destroy incoming debris. And for whatever reason, if those missiles are to fail, the electrostatic domes would shield many of Eiram's major cities. From a defense standpoint, they are set, but the people on the surface weren't very much better off than the people of E'Ronoh, as they are also starving and begging for anything they can get. In the Raised Canal, a narrow waterway, we meet Fontu Zen, who is handing out reliefs to the citizens in any way that he can, even offering the very clothes he is wearing should it help someone in need. We learn, however, that Fontu is part of a royal family and keeps ditching his security detail to help the people of Eiram. He knew he should head back to the palace as both of his mothers would be worried, but he simply couldn't help it. As he makes his way towards the pier, a little girl approaches him with a gift of pearls that she wants him to give the queen. Fontu begins to explain that the queen will love this gift when he is interrupted by a flash in the sky, and after looking closely he identifies the anomaly as a pair of starfighters falling towards the surface, leading him to the realization that something must have gone horribly wrong with the Jedi transport. One of the ships he recognizes as one of Eiram's fleet, crashing and exploding on impact, but Fontu was unable to tell if the pilot was able to eject properly or not. The little girl who had given him the pearls asks if it was a shooting star. He explains that it was not and tells her to go inside in a calm voice. Shortly after, the city alarms begin to go off and Fontu begins yelling for everyone around him to go inside and take shelter immediately, while at the same time his security detail finally catches up to him and tries to pull him back to the palace. Fontu refuses as he wants to stay and help his people, and completely disregards his security as he notices the second starfighter, this one of E'Ronoh design, plummeting towards the sea. Fontu immediately jumps into action and makes a mad dash for the pier to jump into the sea, knowing that regardless of what side you're on, crashing into the sea and drowning is a fate that he would not wish on anyone. He dives under the water as the ship makes contact and begins to sink to the bottom, stopping as it lands on the edge of a ravine. Fontu makes all haste to the ship, thankful for having strong lungs as his people, the ancestors of Eiram, would dive for their food, allowing him to last underwater longer than usual. But Fontu still knows that his air is limited and he must hurry before the ship decides to fall into the deep dark ravine. Fontu makes it to the ship and is startled at the sight of the pilot. Red hair as dark as copper, with fear and distrust in her eyes at the sight of him. He tries to gesture that he doesn't want to hurt her, but in fact wants to help. The pilot gestures to below her seat where Fontu finds a knife. He grabs it and begins to cut away at her harness as the ship slowly begins to slip towards the edge. Fontu is able to cut her loose and grabs a hold of her knife, making for the shore. As he does, he notices a steady trail of blood coming from the pilot and realizes that he needs to hurry to the surface. He gets the pilot to shore and falls down on the beach, gasping for air and spitting up seawater, turning around to ask if she's okay, only to find her on top of him with a knife at his throat. Overall, wow. I am truly blown away by the intense action that starts this book. I guess that's just going to be the trend of the High Republic books moving forward, because Light of the Jedi was the same way, starting off nice and calm and then disaster strikes at a ridiculous pace. If these 4 chapters are any indication of how the rest of the story is going to go, I'm going to be so very happy with the end result because I am so into this story already. I do have to admit that learning about Orla Jareni's backstory in Phase 1 and how she was involved with E'Ronoh and Eiram was very dry and boring to me, but this has my full attention and makes me want to revisit Phase 1 so I can appreciate those stories more than I already do. And you all know how much I love the High Republic. The characters introduced are great, the dogfights are superb, and pilots are my favorite, so I am a little biased there, but Zoraida does an incredible job of immersing the reader in all of this action while caring for the characters. I mean, the last moments of Blytevin are just so heart-wrenching, and he was just there for the beginning of the book. To me, that's a sign of great writing. I am 100% on board for this book and seriously cannot wait to get my hands on it. I'm not saying that I need an early copy or anything, but it would be nice as I feel I could finish the entire book in one day. But overall, wow, what a ride. But what did you all think of the first 4 chapters of Convergence? I absolutely love it and need more of this story immediately. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. As always, thank you to everyone who stuck around to this point in the video, and it was a much longer video than usual, but we hope to see you again very soon.